let's get this out of the way. What is the current situation with Exile? Well, because we don't see the Facebook posts anymore. So what's going on?
Yeah. The whole thing that we're calling these dual region sensors matrix arrays, and they are not a real matrix array.
So what you're saying is even Greg's current sensor and his IP application is technically not?
Correct. My intention here is not really to hurt him, but like to kind of share my side of the story. I don't infringe on any patents.
Greg, if you're listening to this or if anybody is relaying this message,
Mm.
what are your thoughts on that? Are you
I'm sharing my screen right now. These are some early conversations.
Can you just summarize in a nutshell?
And by virtue of cutting, you're able to mold.
Have you heard any word about TFL sensor coming up and maybe how that top projects that you're working on? I know obviously you got V5 coming.
I call them slip and slides. The sensor inside the middle of the pad. So at that point, you can actually mess around. This is a set of, yeah. This is one of the things that I'm working on. And from a price point, and then the HUD. I know you mentioned the HUD.
Yeah, I saw
Yeah,
that.
tapped into their SDK, and I just fed it vesc data. So the glasses exist today. I'm taking a different approach. So I'm creating these dampening blocks. Absolutely going to give back. Whenever I know that things are okay.
All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is Max, and I got a super special guest today. His name is Carlos Alcazar. He is a tech guru, family man, hailing from Beaver Creek, Ohio. Very accomplished business tech manager. He is the founder of Alcazar Innovations and also Stoked Stock. And currently even working full-time at Key Bank. Very excited to have you. We're here really to learn more about you and then also the situation with the sensor battle, I guess, with Greg at Exile. We would like to hear sort of your take on things. We have a lot of questions, a few from the community as well. Yeah, so welcome.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here, man. I'm here to answer everyone's questions. I'm excited. I know there's a lot of information going around on social media. Some of it is true. Some of it is I guess got distorted as a message went from person to person. So hopefully we can get to the down and dirty and see what the truth is.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that was sort of lost in translation, and because this goes back, quite some time, and there's a lot of threads on Discord, Facebook, and all that. So it all gets kind of like a little confusing and overwhelming. So I guess the purpose of this is really just to clear the air and also set things straight, what's kind of the timeline, but also, too, I wanted to give Carlos a platform to really share about his sensor, the background of it, how he developed it. And we just want to kind of get to the bottom of this, right? So
yeah, I will say that I did not come up with arrays or sensor arrays. Like those have been out for like years. So I think like this is a good jumping on point on like what are sensors, what's a matrix array, what's a dual region, tri-region. I actually have a matrix array sensor here I can show you guys, but I think one of the biggest pet peeves that I have in this whole discussion is the fact that we're advertising dual region sensors as a matrix array. So what is a matrix array? A matrix array sensor provides two-dimensional data on a position, right? So if you have your foot on a grid, you know where that foot is on said grid. So because it has to be a grid, because you need a two-dimensional spatial image, if you will, the minimum amount of data points you can have for a matrix array is 4. So you need essentially 4 dots to detect data. So what that means to us is, you need 4 data pins and you need your 1 common. So when we start talking about matrix arrays and I start seeing sensors that come out and they're saying, hey, this is a matrix array sensor, but it works with a future motion controller, that to me is a red flag because a future motion controller is not made to accept a matrix array sensor. It's made to accept a dual region sensor, which is a left and right 2 data points. That's why we have 3 pins in our controllers. So that's your left, your right, and your common. So this is my biggest pet peeve in this whole thing, man. It's the whole thing that we're calling these dual region sensors matrix arrays, and they are not. here's an example of one that I'm actually working with Matt. So this is a matrix array sensor, and you can see the multiple data points that are coming out to make the matrix array. If I kind of zoom out a little, you can kind of see that there's a 4x3 grid, and wherever your foot is, you can actually see where the foot is happening depending on where you put it on the grid. So like I just want to clear the air here, man. If anybody comes to me saying, hey, look, is Exile matrix array, or even Nexus's, right? Nexus is based off of my design as well. Those are not matrix arrays because they have 2 data points. You need a minimum of 4 for it to be a matrix array sensor.
Interesting. So what you're saying is even Greg's current sensor and his IP application is, and he says terms it matrix array. It's technically not.
Correct. It's weird. I don't know what Greg's engineering background is or technical background, but the sensor that is on his site does not match the sensor that's on the patent. I read through the patent, and there's a lot of weirdness, and I'm not really sure where it's coming from and how we got to this point. One of the biggest red flags that I saw in the patent, and maybe it's not a red flag, like one of the biggest like interesting things that I read in the patent was that his sensor was based on some strain gauge technology, or he had embedded some strain gauge technology within his sensor. That is weird to me because strain gauge detect deformities of a surface, right? So by incorporating a strain gauge into a sensor, you're already saying that you can't support convex or concave surfaces because that distorts the surface of a sensor. So and again, if you were to tear apart the sensor that he's selling now, you would not be able. There's no strain gauge technology in it, which is just further confusing the topic. Like, what is being sold? What's in the patent? What are we claiming? What are we not claiming? It's all a big ball of mud.
That's a really good point you hit, because it's kind of all jumbled now, and we just go with what whoever has the most jargon and the terminology, and we just kind of believe it. Like Greg throws all these like terms around, right? I'm like, okay, I guess that's how it works, but now I didn't even know that his matrix array is technically not, because it's only a 2-point, you said, versus it has to be 4. And I think that's unfortunate, because now he's trying to back it up with a lawyer now to shut things down, and we need to actually to have transparency on what exactly he's trying to lock down. So thank you for sharing that, and I wanted to also kind of get this out of the way too. Some of you may know, like, I have actually helped test and promote the Exile sensor, and I think I was helping Greg for the course of like almost a year, just testing all his betas. I was not comfortable publicly promoting it because I was not happy with it up until the market version, the latest version. There was still some deactivation issues and would disconnect on me on random tricks and stunts and stuff like that. So it took a while for him to really develop something that I actually was comfortable promoting. So just to get it out of the way, I do actually enjoy the sensor, the latest version with the detection dots. But what he's done in the last few weeks on trying to, shut things down and claim this is all his technology as his space, quote unquote, his corner. And he's supposed to be accommodating to the vesc community, which is all about open source and helping each other and having some friendly competition, but not trying to like shut each other down. I think it's not okay, and I am not cool with that. So I'm sort of conflicted because I'm still using the sensor. I enjoy it. I've had no issues with it, but I don't support the principle behind it anymore. So I will continue using it until it breaks or starts malfunctioning. But which leads me to, if Greg didn't do that, if this wouldn't have allowed you and I to meet, and for me to kind of get into this rabbit hole of seeing some of the threads you posted, I'm like, oh my God, this has been going on for this long and I didn't even know about this. And it's scary because I think he was using the fear tactics and trying to shut you down and others as well. So I think it's time to really just get things out in the open, and and let the people decide too.
Yeah. And here's what I'll say about that, because you touched on something. Like, if you're using the Exile sensor and it works for you, then continue using the Exile sensor. I run out of breath when I say this to the community, and that is like, sensors and front pads are very custom to your ride style, right? That's one of the reasons I have the V4s, V3s, and V2s, and one of the reasons I'm not getting rid of those anytime soon. There's riders that swear up and down by the V4s, but then a majority of riders hate the V4s because they're not sensitive enough. Likewise, it's all flip-flop. I have other riders that say the V2s are the best thing since sliced bread, and then other people just don't hate the V2s because they ghost on them. So like it's just bringing options to the table, and whatever works for people works for people. Like I still know people that do the future motion transplants, and that works for them, and great. Like if that's what gets them riding, then do that, right? Like I just want to make sure I separate like the weirdness that's coming from Greg's camp with like people who are actually running an Exile sensor and enjoying it. Like keep on enjoying it. Don't let this drama like deter you from it, because it's only going to hurt you, right? You found something that works, keep using it.
Yeah, fair point. I've had a few people ask me too, like, "Hey, you were promoting and recommending the sensor. Like, should I stop using it now because I saw this drama? And what are your thoughts on it?" I'm like, the sensor's good. You know, you paid top dollar for it. If it's not giving you any issues, if it's not ghosting, keep using it, right? Mm-hmm. But moving forward, you should definitely consider what Carlos or maybe some other people, if they come up with solutions, like weigh your options, right? Weigh the features versus the price point. For me personally, I feel like your product line is very enticing because you offer different sensitivities, and the price point is very, very fair for what you offer, and especially with the V5 coming out, which I'll let you touch upon later. But very exciting stuff, and I'm like I said, I'm grateful that this sort of happened in a way, because now it's like, I think for most people, because they're like, okay, it's not just about Greg's. Don't forget about Stoked Stock. They've been around since you're pretty much the OG, right? You even got, the first cease and desist from FM, so that's sort of validation.
I take that back. Steve, so some people would fight me on it because some people would quote, but like when I first entered the game, Steve was the first OG of sensors. I could never. Yeah, this is I can't pronounce his last name, and I'm probably gonna butcher it. It's either Schoonmaker or Schoonmaker, one of those two. But dude, I love that guy. I love that guy to death. He in my mind is like the true OG. Even there's to make things funny, like there's a post out there by Exile saying that he got the idea of his sensor from Steve. I guess I came out with like the first aftermarket sensor that worked. I got a cease and desist from Future Motion, dealt with all that stuff. But there's other makers out there, right? Like one that comes to mind is Nexus. The other one is Ride DIY, who does sensorless setups, right? Like it's all about options, and I will never stop promoting options. When I first joined this whole thing, and I started doing sensors, I had this naive idea of like one sensor to rule them all, like one sensor is going to work for everyone, for everything. And I was quickly humbled by the fact that everybody's setup is different, everybody's weight is different, everybody rides differently, and you need options. And when I was humbled by that, I was like, okay, I see. So sensorless is still a thing. Cuttable sensors are still a thing. You know, high sensitivity, low sensitivity are still a thing. We just need options for people to choose whatever works best for their ride style and their body type and whatever shoes they're wearing as well.
I love that about your philosophy. Weigh your options. I didn't even know about sensorless. Let's get this out of the way. What is the current situation with Exile? Because we don't see the Facebook posts anymore. So what's going on?
Yeah. So, you know, the Facebook post was deleted because I was asked to delete it by a member of the community. He was trying to mediate between Greg and I. Greg promised that if I deleted the Facebook post, he would email Brad from One Wheel Parts and let them know that, his attorney made a mistake. I deleted the Facebook post because Brad ended up stopping sales on his sensor, especially on Black Friday, which is crazy. I deleted the Facebook post, but, unfortunately that email never made it to Brad. So it is what it is. It's just one of those things. But, I still have a lot of respect for this member of the community that reached out to me. So I'm still glad I did it, just because they asked me to.
That was a big favor that you did for this person, and in hopes of good faith for Greg to reciprocate. Yeah. Personally, I mean, I think you're much kinder than me. I probably would have said, I need to see this email first before I remove the Facebook post. Yeah. But yeah, because you kind of put all your eggs for in hopes that he would be a good person and uphold as a man, right, his word. So he just sort of like, what's the situation now? He just sort of ghosted you? Like, there's no progress on that?
Yeah, the last notification that I received from his attorney was that they've made no allegation that any product by any company, hits any of the claims that he has on his patent. So it feels like there's a bit of a backpedaling situation going on, because on the Facebook thread that's now deleted, there was a lot of, this is my idea, this falls under my patent, this blah 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 blah. But the last formal notification that I have from them is, whoops, never mind, nothing meets any claims, everything is fine. So this just kind of lends to the confusion, right? Like, are we saying that my sensor, is hitting some of his claims? If so, which ones, right? Like, let's get down to brass tacks. And one of the things that I find more frustrating about this whole thing is, in a typical patent situation, Greg's camp and Greg's attorney should be coming to me and saying, hey, this sensor that you're publicly selling hits X, Y, and Z claims on my patent. And that has not happened yet. In fact, the verbiage that I get from Greg is like, hey, your sensor infringes on my patent. I'm not going to tell you how it infringes. You need to talk to your attorney to figure out how it infringes on my patent. And I'm not used to that. It's not professional. It's not standard. And it's just very bizarre how things are working out.
Like you said, you're getting into brass tacks and like, okay, let's dig into this. And there's nothing coming back from that angle. So I think he realizes probably how much he screwed up and that there's no essential merit into his threats, because you said it from the beginning how a matrix sensor is actually defined, and it doesn't seem like that's what he is actually doing on his IP application, or it's not entirely accurate. So I think he's going to run into more issues the more you dig into it, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, maybe he has plans on creating the sensor that's listed in his patent in the future, right? And he's using the funds from selling the dual region that he has now. I'm not entirely sure. All of this, I don't want to say it's wrong because I don't really fully understand what's happening on Greg's side of the world, but it is absolutely bizarre.
One thing that's interesting is I was following the Facebook threads when it was still up, and it was just, I mean, look, Greg and I can only speak from my experience. It's always been either neutral or positive. So when I saw all of this going down, I'm like, who is this person? Like, I know he was a little quirky, and yeah, the way he corresponded was a little funky, but I never got sort of like this weirdness, that was showing throughout his comments, and then from the past of what you shared, screenshots and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh my God, I felt secondhand embarrassment from like just dealing with this person, and I was sort of associated with that. And it was just, I was taken aback because I'm like, oh my God, should I just be part of this whole cancel culture and just like disassociate with him? Because I collab with him on some posts, and then on YouTube I also showed his install thing, and I was just like, let's just take a breather, let's not rush too fast. I wanted to see how this whole thing plays out. Him and I actually, we haven't even spoke at all, because he was actually following up with me a lot on how the sensor's doing, like a lot, right? And I was like, dude, it's good. Like, I have no issues to report right now, but right now it's good. Because there's just so many delays that I could have made more videos if he didn't have so much time, like delaying the launch and all that and the development. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But yeah, he hasn't reached out to me, so we're still like just haven't corresponded at all. But just telling you directly, like, I don't support someone who does something like that. And what I was going to say is that what I saw is the more he spoke, the more he dug himself in a hole. It was just like I was just like reading and just like the shake my head emoji, just slapping my forehead. Like, bro, you could have saw all the feedback. It was a general consensus of like 99% of the community. Like, just take a step back, maybe apologize and be like, listen, we got off to a wrong footing. Let's see how we can maybe work together, or at least minimally, let me just not do this whole lawyer thing to you anymore. You do your thing, I'll do mine, and let the sensor speak for itself, right? I think you even said that. It's just let the option speak for itself. Find the best sensor for you in your price range. And he just did not get it. And I was just so frustrated because he just would keep digging himself deeper. So I gotta say, props to you for being as calm as you have been over the last year and a half or so.
Oh
And
man.
I'm glad. I know you said you were like venting and like you were just letting it, but I think it was much deserved, and you had to do it.
Oh man, it was strange. So when I got the call, so the way it went down, again, this just goes lends to how bizarre this whole thing is. Um, Brad from One Wheel Parts got the notice from Greg first. So let me clarify. So like what we got from Greg was a notice that the very first thing that he sent out was um, it was a notice where my V4s um, touch on some of the claims that he has on his patent, and as such, he was inquiring about us getting a license with him so we can, pay him to continue selling our sensors. So like I get a call from Brad. Brad's like, hey, I just got a notice from Greg, this and that. Like, what are we doing? I'm like, I have no idea. Let me find out. Like, Greg never called me. Greg never sent me a Facebook message. This just came out of the straight blue. So I was at the grocery store when I got that message from Brad, and I was just kind of circling in circles, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like I haven't heard from Greg, and Greg is sending all these notices to people. Like what's happening? And as I'm circling around the grocery store, that's when I was typing in the Facebook post on my phone, just because I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that he claimed that my V4s somehow touch on his patent, where I've been selling, V2s, which, V4s are an evolution of the V2s, since all the way back in, I think it's like 2022. I'd have to look to see when I was selling them, but like I was selling it like a way back when. And even Greg was part of the Discord. I even sent Greg a V2 back in the day. Like it was just all weird. But the big part that I found weird about all of it is that my vendors got the notice, and I didn't get the notice at all. It was very strange. It's not normal. Typically in a business, you would want to reach out to the manufacturer and say, hey, or not even the manufacturer, but like the primary business selling this product, and said, hey, your products that you're handing out to manufacturers are infringing on X, Y, and Z claims. And I never got that. At some point down in the thread, Greg started saying that I did receive it. I did receive it. And I'm like, I didn't. Like, can you provide tracking information? Can you provide some form of proof other than just saying that I did receive it? And that's part again of my frustration on like why we're not being truthful. Why are we saying things that aren't 100% true, and we're kind of bending things in a weird way. And it impacted my vendor. Brad started freaking out. He stopped selling the V4s before Black Friday, and then eventually Matt from Tech Rails got one too. I know Nexus got one as well, and he's just kind of shooting down my vendors, but he never went at me. I never received a formal notice from Greg. It wasn't until after the Thanksgiving stuff where I actually got a packet from Greg in the mail, Greg's patent and the notice that he hand typed and sent to me, right? But he has my email or he has my Facebook, so he could have reached out to me just exactly how I reached out to the other guys. So it's not normal procedure. Here's what I'll say: when I received the cease and desist from Future Motion, this is when I was selling the dual region V3s. Future Motion was very explicit over the claims that my invention was infringing upon. That's how I was able to create the single zone sensor and then bypass those claims, because most of their stuff is for dual zone sensor, so I just made a single zone FSR. I never got that from Greg, and I still don't have that from Greg. I still have no specifics as to why he thinks my V4s infringe on his patent, or, I know he recanted and said that, oh, well, it's not the V4s, it's actually the V5s. And I still don't have any documentation on how the V5s infringe on his patent. Both sensors are inherently different. They function differently. And if we're comparing apples to apples with a patent, again, my sensors don't have any kind of strain gauge technology embedded in them. They're just standard FSRs, the kind of stuff that you see in hospital beds or car seats. Honestly, one of the reasons I didn't patent it is because I didn't think it was patentable, because FSRs exist in all different shapes and sizes. They have FSRs in the shape of a foot. They have FSRs in the shape of like little lines, squares, circles, triangles, you name it. So like, this is just all very bizarre, and it's really hard for me to find the right words to say to try to figure out what the heck is going on.
I think bizarre pretty much sums it up. Hold on, sorry. You actually throwing out some terms that I'm actually not familiar with. You said strange gate and FSR. What does that stand for some of the tech dummies out here?
Yeah, so the strain gauge is a form of FSR. where I guess you can say it's not.
I like how you use both of those terms in the same explanation.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's weird. So like, I'll do we'll start with the strain gauge. So a strain gauge is a type of sensor. I said it wrong when I said it was a type of FSR. It really isn't. A strain gauge is a type of sensor that define or that is able to pick on deformities of a surface, right? It's so essentially this is a sensor. Okay. It's able to pick on strain, right? So if you were to bend the sensor, right, it picks up on that strain because that's what a strain gauge does. So an FSR is a force sensing sensor, and they're typically used everywhere: hospital beds, car seats, or sometimes like in the superstore, those mats, right? Like when you step on, if you're not using the laser stuff, like they're used so much everywhere for so many things. And all that is it just detects force, right? So there's 3 layers. You step on it, and then top layer touches with the bottom layer, and that causes the circuit to close, and that's how you get engagement. So that's the difference between a strain gauge and an FSR. In Greg's patent, he states that his sensor has some form of strain gauge technology embedded into it. And that's not true for my V5s or any of my V4s, V3s, or V2s. We don't use any kind of strain gauge technology. We just use standard, good old-fashioned FSR, 3 layers, spacer, and whenever somebody steps on it, 2 layers touch. So that's hopefully that helps with the terminology a little bit.
Yeah, that helps. Yeah. Thank you for breaking that down. Yeah, I think this whole thing is just bizarre, like you said. Back to the actual letter, right? Because he's mentioned V4. It has the incongruency of him saying, "Oh, I meant V5," makes no sense because they actually put the link, right, for the V4. Where's the link for V5, right? Like they missed both points. Like that's pretty crucial, right? The main point of your whole argument. So I think a lot of us sort of caught that and we're like, dude, this is not sort of like you're gonna just try to do a 180 and expect us to buy it, right? Yeah. So it's just so incongruent.
That's my big thing on Greg's side of the camp. I've learned quickly that he just kind of likes to change the story around and change the narrative around, and that's one of the reasons I put in that post that I'm done with the bullying. I'm absolutely done with this nonsense because it's not fair to me. I haven't done anything wrong. I've just been providing sensors for the community. Sensors came out from like my head. I have communications from a manufacturer on this concept of a modular sensor, which is a cuttable sensor, and you can also put it back together so you can actually build your own sensor. So like I have all these ideas that I've been working on, and for him to out of the blue come out and say, hey, this sensor infringes on my patent that I came up with, it's all complete nonsense. But you did catch on something that I want to touch on with the URL. So one of the things that really upset me was the fact that he added the V4 URL, but then he started telling people that, oh, my attorney made a typo. He actually meant to put a 5 instead of a 4. Well, back then, we weren't selling V5s. That wasn't even, that URL would have never existed. It doesn't exist, right? He was also making claims that we were selling sensors, right? And I hadn't even had my first shipment from the manufacturer then. So I don't know how he was making all of these claims and just had nothing to back it up, nothing to show for it. Like maybe he saw the test units that I sent out for free to other riders to test my V5, and maybe he assumed that those were purchased. But other than that, like I have no idea how he just reached these conclusions and just started acting on them, right? And it was in that whole Facebook thread. I kind of regret deleting it because it showed a lot of how he's trying to change the narrative. And I'm not having it. It's sad, really. It's frustrating and sad, the fact that he's trying to change the narrative and trying to make it seem like I'm the bad guy, because he is trying to do that behind the scenes, and he's the victim, when in reality I've been putting up with his crap all year. Ever since he released his sensor, I've gotten a lot of weirdness from the community, and I finally got confirmation when my vendors were calling me. My vendors is like, hey, like we just talked to this guy from Exile. He's saying that your sensors aren't reliable, your sensors aren't any good, and that his sensors are better than yours. And I'm like, why is he saying that, right? Like, shouldn't the product kind of speak for itself? And why is he calling my manufacturers directly to tell them that the sensor that they're selling, because they're in business with me, sucks and they should go with his. You know, is it illegal for him to do that? No, but there are rules of engagement, right? There's barriers of respect. There's things that you need to follow in business in order to operate properly, and that's just very immature. It's very unprofessional, especially when I get a call from my vendor saying like, hey, this guy's saying your sensors are dangerous. Is it true? I have no idea how to answer that, because that just puts me in a really bad spot.
Yeah, essentially what he was doing is just manipulation. And then with the lawyer letter, it's just a very expensive form of intimidation.
Yeah.
And I think he realized that all these things that he was doing, especially with you, just weren't working and you weren't having it anymore. He was trying to do this fear campaign with your vendors too, and then it just sort of all caved in on him. And we all as a community then we understood this, and I think we just really sort of, you know, what I really loved is just seeing how the community united on this.
Oh man.
And there's such few times that we're like just completely united as a whole, and in one, you know, belief behind the principle of helping each other and giving all of us more options.
You know, it's a good thing you call that out, man. The community rallying and supporting and you know, backing me up is just amazing. Because I've been helping the community. Everybody's reached out to me. Well, not everybody, but you know, a good chunk of people reach out to me. I talk to everyone. I try to meet everyone in the festival, specifically Full Life Fest. And it's just been amazing to kind of see everybody get together and really see what's going on and say, you know, I know Carlos, right? I got Carlos's back, and that made me feel so good. I you know, honestly, it just made me feel on top of the world that I just had the community's love behind me, and it kind of gave me a reassurance that what I'm doing is the right thing to do. That I'm in the right of this whole thing.
Yeah, that was really awesome to see. Like, I don't think I've seen so much love for somebody in the community. And like from someone who's not actually like in the spotlight all the time. Sure, you don't really do the whole social media stuff and you're not out there like posting and all that stuff, but you're behind the scenes and you're involved with the community and meeting people and bringing good vibes, but also contributing, you know, a product for our writing as well. So I love seeing the support that you got for not only you as a person, but also for the products that you make for us. So just big shout out to you on that.
Hey, appreciate it, man. Yeah, and just a big shout out for the community too. Again, the amount of love I got from the community is just, I can't even describe it. I know I'm going to be giving back to the community. I'm absolutely going to give back whenever I know that things are okay. So, you know, just to be fully transparent, I had the GoFundMe, and I think it raised like $2,500 or something like that, which got sent to me. And then from the sensors that I sold that were half off, I have $5,000 or $5,300 something dollars in revenue that came in. And what I ended up doing is I ended up paying, you know, $5,000 as a retainer for legal counsel. And if none of that is used up, especially that other $2,500 from the GoFundMe, I'm thinking actually putting it as like a prize money for like Float Life Fest or something. Just, you know, grab $2,500, maybe bring it up in a briefcase or something, and you know, for the number one Grom to win a race, they get $2,500. I think that'd be freaking sick.
Dude, yeah, that was like community sponsored prize.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that the lawsuit's not gonna go very far, so hopefully, fingers crossed that it doesn't get used up.
Yeah,
And
agreed.
yeah, because I think the more that he tries to pursue this, the more it's going to get very expensive for him as well. So
yeah, I want to see the guy eat, right? Like I don't want to harm him. I don't want to hurt Greg. I just my intention here is not really to hurt him, but like to kind of share my side of the story and say that, you know, I've been working on this concept for a long time. I don't infringe on any patents. This is a novel idea for me. And, you know, I consider this bullying. Like I'm being bullied, or patent trolled, I guess is the right word for it, into this whole thing where it's just not deserved.
Yes, let's not bash on Greg as tempting as, because let's be honest, I think he can bash on himself and he doesn't even know it. So I will say, you know, Greg, if you're listening to this or if anybody is relaying this message, you still have a chance with the community if you're able to take accountability, sort of backtrack on the bullying, take responsibility for it. Let your sensor speak for itself. Because I gotta say, I mean, Look, I think your sensor is good. I'm still using it. It hasn't failed on me. The current market version, the price is a lot higher than the alternatives, but it could have merit if you're just able to let the feature speak for itself. And maybe you have to do an improved version, to keep up with Carlos's V5 and moving forward. But it does start with apologizing, I think, and taking some accountability. So just want to leave that sort of tidbit out there. Is it's not like we're just completely permanently just banishing Greg. He does still have ways to come back, but it's up to you, Greg.
Yeah, agreed, man. And I'll send this message to Greg too, man. Like I have no hate for you. I have no ill will, man. I don't like it when you're saying that, my ideas, my IP is infringing on your patent that came after what I was already cooking up. I don't like the fact you went after my vendors, and you didn't really reach out to me at all. And it's just, I don't like how bizarre all of this is. You and I have had conversations. We can eat at the same table, right? We can work together. I can help you. You can help me. We can collaborate. It never had to hit this level of whatever this is. It never had to come to this, and it is a real shame that it did. But I will help you if you want to come back to the community. I will help you do that, man. You just need to level with me. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, well put. Okay, can you just summarize in a nutshell, just plain and clear, how your sensor is different than Greg's?
Okay, Greg has muddied the waters. Are we talking about Greg's sensor that he's selling in the market today, or the sensor that he's defining in his patent?
Ooh, that's a good question. I guess it comes down to in the patent, right?
Okay.
Because that's what the ramifications are. But it would also be nice to know what is different from the actual market versions are now.
Okay. For the V2s, V3s, and V4s, those sensors are just standard FSR sensors, similar to what he has in the market. It's just a standard FSR sensor with different diagonal cutouts and different leads in there. Nothing too crazy. It's all about the spacer tech, which I can jump into that here in a little bit. But it's essentially just two layers. When they touch, it engages the sensor. The V5s. Okay. The V5s are a completely different animal because the V5s are meant to be cut. The V5s are also focused on specific accurate engagement. Again, it's all about that spacer tech. I actually did something incredibly different with the V5s on the spacer. And that cuttable feature, the fact that the V5s can be cut down to size and can be molded into a different shape sensor, doesn't exist really in the Exile sensor. Exile has posted before, even I remember some comments where he said that he doesn't recommend people cutting his sensor because his sensor was really not meant to be cut, whereas my sensor, cutting it was the primary function of it. So I have one right here, so you can grab it and just cut it in different ways, slice and dice it, and the sensor would still work as you need it to work. With his sensor, you don't have as many options to cut and shape and mold the sensor. Once you cut a whole section, you already lose one side, one whole region of the sensor at that point. Okay. Whereas for mine, you can just cut this little bit here, and then you just lose sensitivity in this little bit here.
I think on your website you have the red lines where you can cut. Yep. Exactly, right?
Yeah. And by virtue of cutting, you're able to mold the sensor into some form of shape that better contours your foot, your pad, your foot holds. Again, something that you don't really see with the Exile sensor. The spacer tech between my sensor and the Exile sensor is completely different. So the spacer tech is really where the magic happens. All FSRs have a top layer in the bottom layer, right? There is a spacer layer in between that separates the top and the bottom. That spacer layer, it's what controls how sensitive or insensitive the sensor is, how it engages, how it bounces back. It just controls the feel of the sensor. So, excuse me, when you're developing the sensor, you care more about the spacer than any other layer of the sensor because that spacer is what's going to give you the performance. If you create a spacer, so the way you want to picture it is, picture it as like retaining walls in a house, right? You have load-bearing walls in a house, right? If you have like two walls and they're very far apart, and then you have a ceiling, you're going to get sagging, right? Especially if there's weight here. So what ends up happening in a sensor that has a spacer that's too far apart is after enough use, it'll always be permanently engaged because it'll eventually end up sagging. So what you do is you put up these little columns, or you build the retaining walls a lot closer so you can maintain that ceiling. And that's where the magic happens. If you make the retaining walls too strong, then somebody gets on the sensor, they can't engage it because the top layer can't touch the bottom layer. If you make the retaining walls too weak or too short or too far apart, then you get sagging and then you get ghosting. So to kind of put it in perspective on my sensors, the V2s are more lower and far apart, and the V4s have more retaining walls in them, which is why the V4s are harder to engage than the V2s.
Okay. Gotcha. So, and the secret sauce is essentially the spacing of the columns and then also the spacer.
Yes.
That combination. Interesting. And then, so segueing to V5, that's totally different? Is it still FSR or?
It is still an FSR. Again, the bread and butter is all on the spacer tech. I actually used, and you can probably see a little bit of them here in the white, these little white nubs. So what I ended up using, so before, I used to use 3M spacer, and I didn't really use any of the nubs that you normally see. The Future Motion sensors have the nubs where they're actually pretty thick, which, we all know that after some rough and tough, like they start wiggling and moving around inside the sensor. So I have similar nubs, but mine are very, very small. So instead of having one large one, I have 4 or 5 small ones spaced out in such a way that it holds up the top layer, but it also allows you to bend the top layer easily. And then on top of those little nubs, I'm using the same spacer tech that I've used in the V4s, V3s, and the V2s, where I'm using a 3M spacer to also isolate the sensor and allow it to be easily engaged and easily depressed, if you will. By mixing these two technologies and by mixing like the sections, if you were to kind of look at this actually has a wall here, a wall here, a wall here, a wall here, and then you see that you have little bits of nubs here that are actually helping hold up this section here. So that's how I was able to get it to act or be as sensitive as a V3, but also be a larger surface area, because that's where you get into more weirdness. So if you were to look at the V2, sorry, I was looking around to see if I had sensors to use. If you were to look around at the V2 has a lot of sensing area. So what that means is you have a lot of ceiling, if you will, right? The more surface area, the more likelihood that you're going to get sagging. That's why as I went to the V3s and the V4s, I actually reduced the sensing area to reduce the possibility of sagging, which ultimately leads to ghosting over time. And that worked maybe a little too good with the V4s, because it made engagement it really hurt engagement on the V4s. So the V4s are more for heavier riders. But it still goes to show that the different sensors and the different spacer tech really controls the sensitivity of the sensor. I even have this one here. This is like the first hex sensor that I came up with, man. This thing was cool. This guy here uses a foam spacer that I was experimenting with.
Ooh,
so it makes the sensor a little squishy. It makes it more like a keyboard.
A little cushion.
Right? Yep, a little cushion. But this is some of the stuff that I've experimented with, because it's all about the spacer. If you don't have the right spacer, you're going to have a shit sensor.
How come that you didn't progress that version more with the foam?
So the big thing with the foam, I actually rode it for a while. It was my favorite sensor, but because it was low density foam, water can get into the sensor, and then eventually you end up with issues. So I ended up putting the foam spacer sensor idea on the side. I didn't discontinue it, because what I wanted to do is I wanted to maybe create a 3M border and then add the foam inside, which will still give you that cushion to push down. It keeps both of the layers up, and it also seals it from water being able to enter the sensor. So that might still come back in a way. So
that's cutting edge, man. Wow. I did not think that was possible. Super cool. Another project to add to your list
Yeah.
for future release.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, we'll touch upon that at the end, like maybe some of your other things that you're working on that you hope to release. Because I did see an HUD that you're
Okay.
kind of working on half a month or half a year ago, but we can touch upon that. Okay, just to summarize that, how does your V5 how is it different than Greg's IP application? Because that's his main argument.
Yeah. Yeah. So
How would you summarize that?
There are different animals. We're comparing a motorcycle to an airplane. So Greg's patent is claiming that his sensor operates on some form of strain gauge technology that's embedded into the sensor. My V5 does not have that. My V5 is just a standard FSR sensor.
FSR. Okay.
That's the biggest claim that I think differentiates. But another one that is differentiating is that I believe Greg claims that there in his sensor, like he has like single leads or something like that he keeps on referencing all the time, but these are not single leads. They're actually fairly wide, and the reason this is really wide is purposeful, because this is what keeps the sensor waterproof. If this line and this line were close and a droplet of water that had salt mixed in hit those two lines, you'll conduct electricity and you'd have a sensor engaged. So the spacing is what's important with the sensor. So the single leads argument that Greg keeps on saying is completely false, because I'm not using a single lead. It's actually multiple, and it's spaced out in such a way where shorting of the circuit can't happen.
Okay.
So there's a couple of different
clear.
and
yeah,
then of course
those
you
are
got
the
the
two main
cuttable.
differences.
Yeah, and you have the cuttable side too. It's I think that's the big part, though. The fact that you can cut and mold the sensor into a different shape. You can make the sensor this big, or you can make it, half big or diagonal. Like you just have so many options now with the sensor that you just don't get with Greg.
Okay. So if you can play just devil's advocate for a second here, where do you think he's getting his argument from? Is there anything that has like even a remote foundation, or it's just totally bizarre and off axis, like doesn't even hit it?
It's bizarre. And he even cites that he's been talking to me about his patent last year or for years or whatever, but our conversations regarding his patent was like, he notifies me that my sensor might infringe on his patent. I ask him how. His answer is, I can't tell you that until my patent is published. Like, that's literally the whole breadth of the conversation. And then now he's coming back at the end saying that, like, hey, we've been talking about your sensor infringing on my patent. You didn't have a problem with it before. And I'm like, well, you never gave me anything to argue against. You never gave me any details. You never gave me any technical information. So I didn't agree then, and I still don't agree now.
Just seems completely unfounded. And I think you clearly... The difference between you and him is you clearly listed out the points and you demonstrated it too, and it makes sense. And unless Greg's like responds back to you with his clear arguments, his points, right? Like sort of like a cease and desist, it's just, I don't think he has much to, no grounds to really fight on.
Yeah.
So we'll just see what he does next. But I think you really made your point. And it really has brought a lot more eyes to what you have to offer and future things that you're working on as well. So I think this is sort of a blessing in disguise in a way. And let's look forward now. I have 2 or 3 more questions on my end, and then Eryk gave you some questions, and then I have 1 or 2 from the community as well, and then we can pretty much wrap this up. Have you heard any word about TFL sensor coming up, and maybe how that would differentiate from yours?
So that's one of the sensors I'm so excited about. Again, it's just another option for the community. I've talked to Jeff a little bit, because I'm also working on some other stuff here that I'll share at the end, and I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't stepping on his toes as well. And I don't know what they're working on, but I think it's going to be really cool. I genuinely think it's going to be really cool to see.
Yeah, it sounds like they've been working on it for a while. I don't know any details. So
they got Nico and Robert.
They got.
Dude, they got Nico and Robert, so for sure they're going to come up with something nice.
Yep, they got the engineers in the back working on it. So, yeah, that'll be cool to see, and maybe a future collab between you guys. Who knows?
Yeah.
Now, licensing. What are your thoughts on that? Are you even open to that at all, or there's no merit in that? If so, what would the deal look like? What are your thoughts in general?
Yeah, if there was merit and my sensor, somehow hit on the claims that he had on his patent, then yeah, I wouldn't mind paying on licensing. But even so, the licensing costs that Greg is quoting are not realistic. I think he quoted 35% that he wanted me to pay, and when I kind of balked at that, I was like, that's incredibly high. Like, it's going to be eating into my margins by a ton. One of the things that really left a really bad taste in my mouth was the fact that, he's like, well, you can just charge the 35% and let the customers pay for it. So all this, like, people don't realize it, but all of this, like, licensing talk and all these conversations with Exile is really going to hit everyone, because Exile's expectation is that, hey, people are going to pay me licensing, and it's not going to be the person selling the sensor is going to be paying licensing. It's going to be the consumers who are buying the sensor that are going to be paying Greg for licensing. And I don't agree with that model at all.
Yeah, especially has no legitimate claims that he's shown so far. Like, why should we pay a premium for his tech, quote unquote, when he hasn't even proven it? It's pretty sad to see also that, like, the name of his business sort of like came to fruition for his current situation. He sort of exiled himself, which was just unfortunate, because he could have saved it so many times.
Yeah.
Just drop the whole thing, apologize, let the sensors speak for themselves. Let's just kind of all be, not friends, but at least we're like, friendly, and just, supporting each other and helping the community in general. But man, I guess we're way past that. Yeah. The last thing I wanted to cover is, I know you mentioned you had some early design sketches. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to, like, I think you mentioned November 2021, something like that. If you want to touch upon that, because it seems like that really came first before anybody was on scene, right? I don't know if that was even before Steven Schoonmaker.
Steve was always the OG. I absolutely will always admit that I came after Steve. I think I might be able to share my screen here. So I'm sharing my screen right now. These are some early conversations. This is going back to October of 2022 on the concept of what I call the modular sensor design. So this was a sensor design where you had these individual sections which can be cut, but the sensors still remain operational. You could also put them back together. I have another version of it where you can actually build on it, and you can actually build up your own sensor shape, kind of like a Lego blocks and stuff like that, which that version didn't pan out, but the modularity and the cutting of the sensors still takes merit. So this is here, back in 2022, October 5th, but I have a funny email. So this email is from me, from my work email. So I was kind of thinking and ideating on, like, sensor technology and how to make a sensor modular. And I was at work, and I'm like, oh, this is a great idea. So I ended up, just creating the sensor, and I was like, yeah, I'm just going to email me this to my personal email and send it to the manufacturers. And, you can see here, then again, this is October 5th, 2022. That same day, I sent this to the manufacturers, like, hey guys, I have this great idea, October 5th, 2022. And this is something that I've been ideating on. And I ended up coming up with this version here that you're seeing, which is a flavor of this, which shows the cuttable section. So this is like the sensor here that I showed, which is the hex sensor, where you can cut the sections and the sensor still remains operational. This is when Greg first reached out saying that my sensor infringed on his patent. And that's when I started asking, was like, how, what, why? Like, what are you saying is infringing? And I never really got clear direction.
You already publicized this before Greg reached out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. This was back in the Discord channels. I was Ouden and I were messing around with this thing, and we were really excited for it. This is a whole different ballgame. Like, if you look really closely, you can actually see these circles, and this goes back to the spacer tech, man. It's all about how you shape up the spacer. If the spacers aren't set, then you're going to have a faulty sensor. So I put a lot of effort into these sensors. And again, this is something that goes back to October 2022, where I was first working on this with my manufacturer. And for Greg to come back and say, yeah, no, this infringes on my patent that came out later it's no good, man. It's not right.
Yeah, you're the one who publicized this first. So there's no way that, unless he has no evidence that he came up with anything before this.
Yeah.
And so
not that I've seen.
Yeah, it's just unfounded. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So those, it looks like Pac-Man emojis. What's the V, the open part for?
So the original idea was that we were going to make these circles in this open V so it can better contort to concave surfaces. So instead of having a full circle trying to fit into a concave, we did the V. So wherever you put it, it'll flex and not cause strain. That was the purpose of the V's. Then after some testing and playing around, and this is around the time I started talking to Brad and Matt over from Tech Rails and One Wheel Parts. I'm like, hey, I can actually make these in the shape of of the Halo pad and use the hex grip, and I can actually make the spacer so it helps contour because it's foam, it's flexible, and then that's how you ended up with this version here on the side.
Very cool. You came up with these innovative ideas way back before we're even really thinking about like sensors in depth. So very impressive, man.
Hey, I tried. Let me get rid of the infinite screen.
There are a few questions from Eryk. Just a heads up, would have loved to have Eryk. I think a lot of you have seen his One Wheel documentary vid that he made a few months ago. It was very fascinating, his perspective on things.
Quote with the DIY accessories to bring the sport to another level. But everyone making a business out of it would be sued by the one and only skateboard company. This all sounds ridiculous, right? But what if I told you it is a true story?
Did Carlos have direct contact with Greg? If so, what was discussed? I think we kind of talked about that through the Facebook messages.
No, so it was through Facebook. When all this came to a head and I asked him to give me an apology, I wanted to talk to him through FaceTime. So we did a FaceTime call, and that's when he presented the 35% licensing deal and all this stuff. And he was very adamant that my sensor did fall under his patent when we had that FaceTime call. But outside of the FaceTime call, it's always been either Discord or Facebook.
Gotcha. What does Carlos think about Greg pursuing competition through patents, royalties, and legal action? Is that a question you want to answer?
Yeah, Carlos is not like that at all. I think it stifles innovation. It is, especially when you're someone who swings hard like that. It's not helpful, and it doesn't help the community. Patents have their time and place. Whenever you're starting to work on like in a community that's niche, that is ripe for innovation, ripe for people coming up with new products and new ideas, I think patent can hurt the community because somebody who's relatively small can come in and say, hey, none of you newbies can do a sensor because I own all the sensors. And then that deters people from even wanting to have the conversation. That some people just want to avoid the drama. Oh, so-and-so's already creating a sensor. I don't really want to create a sensor because they have a patent. It's one of the reasons people are afraid of creating aftermarket parts for Future Motion boards because they're worried that Future Motion might hit them with a cease and desist, right? That's a perfect example of how this is continuing to hurt the community by just creating patent and patent wars and trolling and notices. Like, it's not helping anyone. If you want to create your IP, create a patent, like you can develop a patent and just post it in the public domain, right? Why don't you do that? Why do you want to create a patent where you can set licensing and royalties and you can charge people for your idea? There's merit, it's legal, there is a system for it, I agree, but I as a person just fundamentally disagree with it because I believe in the evolution of knowledge and I believe in true innovation. And by telling you, hey, you can't innovate on this product unless you pay me 35%, that just kills innovation flat out.
We're truly like a version of Benjamin Vedder when he created the vesc programming. He didn't seek to patent it or refrain people from using it. I mean, credit him, right? But and look how far it's come in the one wheel world. So kudos to you, man, because that was one of my questions that we touched on earlier. Is like I looked up you and I was like, I wonder if he has anything he's trying to protect or claim on, right? And you have nothing. And it doesn't mean that you don't have IP. It's just you choose not to try to restrain other people from developing on it and that sort of thing too. So if you can just touch upon sort of, I think you already did, but I just kind of wanted to give you a shout out on, I found that fascinating that you're actually not only doing the work, but you're actually upholding the philosophy behind it, which is like, look, I'm not trying to hide or prevent anybody from developing on this. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. It's all about growth, man. It's all about helping the community. I've been on the Discord channels helping a few folks too. Like somebody needs a good CNC manufacturing hookup, like I'm like, hey, get these people. Like even though I'm using it for my stuff, they can use it for their stuff too. It's about helping each other grow. If you don't help each other grow, the community is just not going to grow, and it's going to just collapse upon itself.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, man, I think that's all from my end. You covered so much and appreciate that. Tell us about some of your, maybe some of your top projects that you're working on. I know obviously you got V5 coming. Do you have a release date on that? Are you still working on HUD? Anything else that you're working on in the near future?
Yeah, so the V5s they are out. They're sold out. You know, I'm getting more coming in. I'm hoping that I'll get more stock here near the end of the month or maybe early January. So the V5s are still coming, and they're coming in hard. But you know, before I get into some of the other products, I wanted to share a little bit about my goal and purpose in Stoked Stock. So my goal, and no disrespect to any other companies that are out there, my goal is to be a cheap option in the community, right? I don't want to be the Lamborghini. I don't want to be the Ferrari. I want to be the cheap Toyota Corolla that, you know, a high schooler can go to and use that as their first best build, right? When right now we have this, what I think is a money gate, where everything's so expensive, and it's either buy used Future Motion stuff or, you know, buy other products. And I think that barrier to entry is high, and it hurts some people. And I say that because I actually came from a very impoverished background. You know, I had a single mom. We didn't have a lot of money. And you know, if one wheel existed back then, there would be no possible way in hell that I would be able to enter the market given the prices that we're seeing. So my intention, my goal behind Stoked Stock is to create, you know, the cheapest, like the not cheapest in quality, but the cheapest in cost parts for people to build their vesks, to people to actually get out and ride and to try new things and to innovate, right? Create things. So as part of that, I'm trying to create maybe not the most sexiest looking products, but, you know, affordable products that a college kid or a high school kid can get without having to break the bank. And with that, so I got a couple of things that I'm working on. I actually have this thing here. I'm actually creating some rails. So this is a set of, yeah.
Is that
so
what
this
you're
is a little
on?
Fokker.
Is that from you or also with Matt? Just you on the rails?
No, this is me.
Wow.
This is me.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're getting into fabrication and CNC?
Yeah. So I'm creating a rail where you can actually mount the controller on the actual rail itself.
Whoa.
So that way you can either run dual batteries, so a dual bat in the front and then in the rear, or you can just not need to pay money for a controller because you have it all into one rail. For the Boxster rails, I'm trying to make it so it's as affordable as possible. I have to work with the manufacturers on the pricing. But then I also have the non-Boxster rails coming, which are just a set of straight rails, which again, you know, essentially these rails without the sidecar. And you can actually put two battery boxes in the front and the rear. So you can use a battery box as your controller, right? And these are all BTG, so they'll fit the big tire as well. So yeah, this is one of the things that I'm working on. And from a price point perspective, the non-sidecar rails, I'm trying to get them to be under $200. That is the goal, because again, I'm trying to make it affordable for, you know, college kids to come in or high school kids to come in and actually be able to buy rails and build the vesc. And I think I'll be able to hit that goal because I've made the manufacturing incredibly easy, and I think I can do it in a way that's sustainable. But yeah, so that's one of the products that I'm working on. Another product that I'm working on is the LiDAR stuff. Everybody knows about the LiDAR in the intake rails. I think he calls it Echo. I haven't given it a name yet officially, but you know, we're working on creating another sensing option for the community, right? Because you have sensorless, you have FSR sensors. You could also do LiDAR, right? Why not? And a lot of people say, well, what if there's dust or what if it gets dirty? Fine, but you can actually use LiDAR in conjunction with a real matrix array. So you could actually have a combination, and you can have a custom controller that's able to take different inputs of data and make decisions where, you know, if the LiDAR is blocked, you can still make assertions on whether or not a rider is still on the board. I've used human detection sensors before. I've tried experimenting with that, but they're a little too sensitive for my taking. some vibration sensors as well, and a couple of other sensors that we've been experimenting with. But yeah, so that's another one that I'm working on. I'm actually hoping to have a prototype here before the end of the year, but we'll see. I have to send it to Matt because Matt's been waiting for this for a long time. And then the HUD. I know you mentioned the HUD.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, because that was posted back in June. I was like, where is this? I need this now.
So technically, it exists now. So this is the weird thing with the HUD. So I bought a pair of active look glasses, which are usually used by bicycle riders, professional bicycle riders, and it gets their heart rate and their speed and their location. And I just bought these active look glasses, and I tapped into their SDK, and I just fed it vesc data. So the glasses exist today, and if you download the Stoked Stock BMS app, you actually can turn it on by going, I call it eye candy. You can go into the eye candy section in the app, and you can get it connected to your glasses, get it connected to your board, and you can actually use the HUD stuff today. The HUD stuff, eventually I'll plan to take to market, but I haven't found a good HUD manufacturer to where I can sell it at an attractive price point. Again, I'm not trying to be the Ferrari. I'm not trying to be the Lamborghini of the world. Right now, like the active look glasses are $300, which I think is an insane amount of money for the technology that you're getting. And I think just over time, the price is going to go down. So I'm waiting for that. But for those that, have active look glasses or have money to spend around to try it, you can buy a set today and then download the Stoked Stock app and use the HUD as it exists today.
Oh, okay. So you just have to pay the premium of the glasses and then download the sorry, what was that? The
Stoked Stock. It's the Stoked Stock BMS app.
Oh, okay.
I just put it under the BMS app.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Gotcha.
I ride with it. I personally love it because I can get to see duty cycle and big old numbers on the side.
And do the lenses, can you get them like where they the transition lenses where when you're out in the sun riding, it gets the shade going and then gets clear when it's not sunny?
Yeah.
Ah.
My buddy has a transition, so he wears them, and they get sunny and they get darker. But if we go like under a shade, they transition away. So they do have those.
Dude, awesome. Yeah, I just got like a pair of those glasses, but they also have speakers in it. And on Amazon, yeah, they're like $40 or something. So if there's a way to combine maybe the actual market release of something that you're going to do one day, if you can incorporate the speakers into the phone, because they seem pretty affordable right now. They're only like going for $40 for transition lenses and 2 speakers in the bridge or the frames of the glasses. And they're not like the $300 Bose, or actually Bose discontinued, but the Ray-Bans, the Meta frames going for like $300. They're not fancy, but they get the job done. They look good, and they're going for $40. And I've seen even go lower cost. So if I had that with the HUD display, it would be like something I'd be all over. So just an idea for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll take it. I'll sit on it. Once I find a good HUD manufacturer, we'll start building the frame and see what we can build on that frame. But they work really well, man. It's me and my buddy have it. I convinced my buddy to buy it. Now he doesn't ride without it. Same thing with me.
I know. I think that deserves a little bit more promotion because I think some people do have the budget for that. So if they have it, do it.
One thing that I'm working with One Wheel Parts is something called a Ghostbuster. It's a really cool thing. It does 2 things. So like one of them is a safety device, which it's like a little strap you put on your shoelace or around your ankle, and if the board ghosts on you, it disconnects the magnet and then shuts off the board. You don't use the magnet to engage the board. You still need the sensor to engage the board. It's only as a protection in case the board ghosts. But on that same setup, we're also looking into just adding a little toggle switch and actually making the magnet part of a sensorless engagement technology as well. So again, it's all about bringing the options.
Back to that rail, like you can't just drop that and so nonchalantly. I'm just like, what the hell's going on here? So you're putting a controller box on the side, which is I think it has benefits than putting it into the Canon core because it's just obviously less complicated, right? But then what about all the wiring?
So that's actually where I got the motivation from. I got the motivation from
right?
Val. Yeah, Stanley. Yeah. In fact, I think I called it like the Aldi core or something like that because it was supposed to be a cheap knockoff of what he was doing. The wires, it's going to be hard to solve for, but I think I figured it out. I have to actually make this hole a lot bigger, but what I was going to do is I was going to make this bigger and do a grommet similar to how we have in cars, because there's wires coming in to your engine bay into your vehicle, and they're actually use like really thick grommets. I was going to do the same concept here, to shove everything through a grommet to keep it sealed. It's not going to be completely waterproof, meaning if you submerge it, you're going to have problems. But if any splashing or anything like that, you should be okay with. So that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, and that's a heat sink in and of itself.
Yep, right? I mean, it's a chunk of aluminum, so it'll definitely absorb some heat. But it still needs to be tested, because now you're going to have the controller heat mixing with the wheel heat. So what does that look like? I have no idea. You could end up in a situation where the controller heats up at the same temperature of the wheel, or vice versa. So yeah, these are still prototype. I'm still working on them, but I'm really excited to get them together.
It's got promise.
Them put together.
I think it's actually got more, because if they're dealing with the heat dissipation inside the motor of the cannon core, I'm sure being outside would be slightly better, because maybe you can have cooling fins. I don't know, on the outside, on the around the edges. But the benefit of that is obviously more. You can have dual battery packs, so now the board is going to be completely balanced.
Because it's balanced, I think it's going to be a lot more easier to handle, easier to accelerate. The duty cycle, I would assume, would be lower. Again, these are all assumptions and theories. I could be 100% wrong. I have not tested these rails, but these are the theories that I'm going by, especially when I saw Stanley's video, because I think he did a dual battery pack build as well, so some of this stuff checks out. But yeah, I'm super excited. I'm itching to get these rails on a board and just get it out in the street.
Hell yeah, man. Breaking news.
Yeah.
Holy crap. And is that the first time you're kind of like disclosing that?
It is. I mean, I've disclosed it to a couple of friends that know, I've talked to Matt, because I do business with Matt. Again, I'm super respectful, right? I know Matt sells my sensors. Matt and I have a relationship with Brad. Brad sells Matt's tech rails, and I need to make sure that they're okay with me selling rails as well. So it's all about respect. It's all about everybody eating at the same table. So they know that I'm working on rails as well, but this is the first time it's been publicly posted. I think I actually posted it on Discord, on a channel on Discord, now that I think about it. Everybody was making fun of the sidecar because it's so big. It's weird, but it's again, it's options. It's an option thing for the community.
The sidecar. Is that what they call the little what's the chariot next to a motorcycle?
I think that's what it is.
Is the sidecar? I think there's a name for it.
I think so.
I'm blanking on it right now.
Cool. So I have that. Another one that I have, which I actually don't have it because I have it mid-installed on a board, I think. Actually, I may have it here.
But wait, there's more.
I'm trying to solve for the suspension thing. A lot of people are solving suspension with like these big things. I'm taking a different approach. So I'm creating these dampening blocks. So you can see here, this is actually a TPU thing. It's actually squishy, and this is like what it looks like fully assembled.
Okay.
So the way it works is, because you actually have a soft TPU here, as you're riding the wheel, the TPU is absorbing all the vibrations. So as it absorbs the vibrations, it passes less vibrations to your legs, so it should feel like a whole lot smoother ride. And because it's TPU and this piece is removable, you can actually adjust the softness of your ride. So you'll be able to kind of change how soft and how buttery you want the ride to be just by changing the TPU section. So this is another prototype thing that I'm working on. Those are the dampening blocks.
My God, you truly are a mad scientist, man.
I try.
Come up with this stuff.
And this is another reason for why the V2s, V3s, and V4s aren't going to go away. So eventually I'm going to be creating pads. They're going to be TPU. They're going to be 3D printed, so they're not going to look as cool as some of the other pads in the market. But what my pads are going to allow you to do is, I call them slip and slides. And the way they work is you can actually slide the sensor inside the middle of the pad. So at that point, you can actually mess around with grip.
Yeah, then you can
put all the grip here, mess
around.
Yep.
Wow.
And you don't have to worry about like the sensor and you don't have to worry about the sensor giving you issues. I do have a little spacing here for people who want to use hooks, but that's probably going to be a concern for them, because if they drill in here, they're going to hit the sensor. But you can also stick a V5 in here. So if you plan for it, you can stick a V5. You can actually leave your options for hooks and stuff on your pads. So that's another one that I'm working on.
Slip and slide. It's like sensor cartridges.
Yeah. And now you have the different sensitivity sensors, right? So you're sliding the sensors in there. Oh, I need something more sensitive. You put a V2. Oh, I need something less sensitive, V3 or V4, and you can just start playing around. So
Dude,
that's
fantastic.
that's yeah, man. The last thing that I've been trying to come out with for the longest time is an affordable battery box. I actually worked with it with Leah. It was one of the first projects we worked on together. And I haven't been able to take it to market yet because I haven't been able to find the right material to do it in. I thought I found a really good material. It was like a tough resin, and then I gave it to a couple of people, or a couple of people bought it, and the boxes started cracking. So I'm trying to find the most affordable material that is also safe for people to use. But I got battery boxes eventually coming our way as well.
You have basically all of the main components to build a board from your site as well, sort of like Fungineers with their Fun Wheel. I think you'll
Yeah.
have a lot of the main components over time. Well, dude, that we covered so much, and I think we got to the bottom of this. I appreciate you giving some background, pretty much a complete history of really what went down, and you gave specific points of how the letter against you is totally unfounded, and just like you said, it's a form of bullying, and which is unfortunate, but I think it's not the end for him. We can still like kind of come together at the same table, like you said, and eat together. Just up to him now on how he wants to move forward. But I think your work speaks for itself. You as a character, the things that you have in development is so exciting. And guys, make sure you check out Carlos's website, stokedstock.com. Stoked Stock, okay. And then he's going to have some more things coming your way. And I think January is the reload for the V5 sensors. So make sure you cop one of that. I think is the GoFundMe still up as well?
Yeah, the GoFundMe's still up.
Okay, so that's still up. So just in case, there's a curveball coming in terms on the legal front, we want to make sure that, you have a way to support. I just want to thank you for what you do. I actually... full disclosure, I didn't really know who you were. I knew of Stoked Stock, but because you're kind of behind the scenes, more of like in person, and I'm in Cali, so it's harder for me to like travel all over for the events these days. So I haven't actually gotten a chance to meet you yet. So, but it was just, I was so grateful that this whole drama happened because like, oh my God, where have you been this whole time? So the things that you've done, that you continue to do, especially for the vesc community, we are so grateful for you. So I want to thank you, and I'll leave it with you for the final words.
Yeah, I want to thank the whole community. I mean, I'm only here because of everybody. If everybody just gets together and says, get out of here, I will pack up my bags and leave, because I'm here for everyone. Everyone who's had an interaction with me or talked to me knows that, my goal is to get someone on a board as safe as possible, as cheap as possible. And that's just my biggest focus, and just the love that I've received from the community recently. I struggle to talk about it because I just have no words. I've never had that kind of support ever in my life. So just kind of seeing it happen right now as a 33, 34-year-old man, like, this is dumbfounding for me. And I love you guys so much. Like, if you're writing an Exile, I love you. If you're writing Future Motion Sensor, I love you. Like, you guys are just fucking awesome. And as long as you guys have me, I'll keep delivering what you guys need from me.
Well said, man. Make sure that you continue to support Greg. And then look, I'm sorry, man. There's so
Dang, man.
Dude, I am so sorry. It was just getting so mixed up in all this. Make sure you continue supporting Carlos, and especially all the projects he has coming up. If Greg tries to pull a fast one on you, I think you should put the Facebook post back up just for reference, man. Like, okay. Especially all like the new people that may be seeing it, because our community is constantly growing. Like, yo, what's the history on this? You think you would do that?
I mean, it's deleted. We'll see. I wouldn't discount it. I think if Greg continues to bully me, I might consider posting another one up. I don't want to cause trouble, right? That post was more, and I know some people view it differently, but like, that post for me was more asking for help than it was, doing anything. And I just don't want to continuously ask for help from the community. I mean, I asked for help this time, and everybody rallied, and they came and they helped, and they gave me everything I needed to be able to fight back. Awesome. I want to make sure I don't keep doing that.
No, for sure.
I should be able to fight some of my own battles too, but in this instance I really needed the community's help.
Yep. And I think from everything that you've shared in this video, I think there's really not much to be bullying you on moving forward, in my opinion. So I think you really covered yourself here. So yeah, with that, again, thank you. And maybe we can do, when you have more product releases, especially on that rail, we'd love to chat more with you on that in a future video.
All right.
So super.
Yeah, man, I'm down. Just let me know.
Heck yeah. And that could, like, maybe we can set up a time frame where it's actually like, okay, we got a time for you, Carlos. We need this to be released soon-ish.
Fair. Okay.
Awesome.